they were supposed to celebrate Independence Day or the Nakba Day, but they, of course, their celebrations were ruined because of all of these fires that happened. But there were certain people inside of Israel who were not celebrating. They were actually mourning. And some of them were in Jerusalem, especially in an area called Mea She'arim that has many of the Haredi community inside of Israel, and many of them are constantly targeted by the state. And let's watch these people and their protests. So that's in Jerusalem, ladies and gentlemen. People mourning the Israeli independence or the Nakba commemoration, burning Israeli flags and raising Palestinian flags. And these people are constantly targeted time after time by the Israeli authorities, and Israel uses brutal measures against them. By the way, Israel, the Israeli forces in Mea She'arim in particular, in Jerusalem, they beat these people up, they imprison them, they constantly harass them, they go inside of their neighborhoods. But yet, despite all of that, the community over there, they're still able to conduct certain activities when the Israeli forces are not around, because they're very close-knit. And these neighborhood of the Haredi communities or the Orthodox communities in Jerusalem, it's as if you're going into a different world, by the way. All of them, part of that community, it's as if, you know, their own laws are being implemented there. However, the Israeli regime, they always send people to harass them, to imprison them, to beat them, and sometimes even if they have legitimate protests that have been approved by the state, for example, they will also go and attack them. That's on that one. Then there are people in the British Parliament who are having a change of mind. And one of them is from the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is generally known to be a party that is more supportive of Israel. The previous government, before the Labour government, they hardly had anyone criticizing Israel, saying a bad word about Israel. Now we know the establishment's position in relation to Israel, but statements are coming from the Conservative Party that show that there's a change happening in the way some of these people are viewing the whole situation, and in the way they actually addressed their past beliefs in relation to Israel and Palestine. One of them was Mark Pritchard. Mark Pritchard, he had this statement in the British Parliament, and I'll share it here quickly with you.
Deputy Speaker, of course, Israel is an important security, trade and democratic partner, but that doesn't give it a blank check. The fact is that 13,000 children have been killed, 25,000 have been injured, maimed, wounded, orphaned, some of them. And for many years, I've been in this House 20 years, I have supported Israel pretty much at all costs, quite frankly. But today, I want to say that I got it wrong. And I condemn Israel for what it is doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza and indeed in the West Bank. And I'd like to withdraw my support right now for the actions of Israel, what they are doing right now in Gaza. Of course, the hostages should be released. Of course, that Israel has the right to exist. Of course, the Israeli people, the Jewish people should have the right to live in peace, but so do the Palestinian people. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. that the life of a Palestinian child is as precious as the life of a Jewish child. And this is this particular moment in time. We've had lots of statements over the last 18 months. This is not only this Parliament's not greatest hour. I'm really concerned that this is a moment in history when people look back where we've got it wrong as a country. Can the minister stand up to our friends and allies in the United States and make a strong stand for humanity, for us being on the right side of history, for having the moral courage to lead, not just to follow the United States, and to make a difference? That's why we're all elected here. Let's stand up for life. Let's stand up for all children, not just Jewish children.
So interesting statement coming from conservative Mark Pritchard, and I had a couple of observations. Number one, the fact that some of these people in parliament, regardless of they're in the ruling party or not, having these reviews, this reality check is important, is very important. There were multiple things that he stated here. Firstly, taking back, withdrawing the support that he had for Israel all of that time, condemning Israel, saying that, well, the Palestinians also deserve rights like the Jewish children. As he said, we're on the wrong side of history. Finally, someone is saying that in the British Parliament, and we need to be on the right side of history, and also speak with our allies and friends in the United States and not always follow, again confirming what something that many people don't like to talk about in the UK, that the UK always follows the United States. Now, very important, of course, he didn't have to say that they have a right to exist, and he also didn't have to talk about what they call the hostages, because at the end of the day, that's part of the trick that they have in the propaganda, that you always need to mention something, if you criticize them, part of the psychological warfare. However, saying that, these statements like that, they're welcome and they're good, and they're indicating that some people have the courage and bravery to face themselves, to face what they actually believed before and how they were brainwashed after seeing all of this. I mean, can someone really tell me now that those who are either silent or, not speaking in either the British Parliament or any other European or other parliaments, that they haven't seen anything in the past 18 months? Nothing whatsoever. I mean, most of them have accounts on X, right? I'm sure someone tagged them. I'm sure someone sent them something, and the images that are coming every single day from Gaza are devastating. It only takes one of them. So it shows you that there is a change when it comes to some people, and this change is good. And more people need to have the guts, the bravery to stand up if you thought something and you changed your mind. It's not too late. It's very important to do that. It's very necessary to do that. Now, moving on to the next topic, which is the Ansarullah movement and what they're doing with the United States. Yesterday, we spoke about the shocking statement that came from Donald Trump when he said, of course, in a twisted way, in a manipulating way, oh, they surrendered, basically, they don't want to attack us. But really confirming that there has been a deal and it's actually been mediated. But we've had more revelations coming today from multiple figures in Ansarullah, or what's known as the Houthis, confirming that there is actually a deal between them and the United States. Now, two people spoke from Ansarullah today to Al Arabi television alongside other statements. One of them was Muhammad Abdus Salam, who's a senior figure in Ansarullah, and the other one was another senior figure in the political office, Muhammad al-Houthi. Muhammad Abdus Salam mentioned very interesting things in relation to that agreement that they reached, with the United States. One of them was confirming that this was mediated by Oman. So yesterday I spoke about the fact that Oman mediated between the two after there were initial reports. Now Yemen and Ansarullah, they're confirming that Oman mediated, and they received this information from Oman following the United States addressing Oman. So it's contrary to what Donald Trump is saying. So they're both sides are confirming, the United States and Yemen, that there is something, that there's some sort of an agreement. But Trump is saying, oh no, they surrendered. And Yemen is saying, no, actually there was a mediation. However, they said something very interesting, that these mediation attempts started 2 weeks following the beginning of the United States aggression against Yemen for the sake of a genocidal entity. So you're talking about a process that began over a year ago, over a year and a half ago. That means, well, there have been attempts clearly with both sides interested in de-escalating, but the United States constantly, according to Abdus Salam, having very high demands and unrealistic demands initially to force them to stop. That would include Israel, only for them to climb down the ladder, for the Trump administration to climb down the ladder and exclude Israel from any agreement. Now, he also said that the United States reached this agreement with Yemen after the military pressure failed. And then he said the United States returned and agreed to stop if we stop our attacks against them. So, mutual agreement between Yemen and between the United States doesn't include Israel. He reiterated any aggression against Yemen will be met by a counterattack, so long as they do not attack us under any excuse, because the Yemenis are expecting, and they have indicated, this leader and others too, that Trump is a person who flips and he is not trustworthy. Although Trump says, I trust their word. So Trump has trust in them. They don't have trust in him. Very interesting. Trump said, I trust their word, and they're not going to attack. They said, no, we actually don't trust. We're going to have to see things being implemented. However, they reiterated Ansarullah that so long as the Americans don't attack us, we will adhere to the understandings that we have with them. How does all of that translate in relation to Israel? Yesterday, again, I spoke about the fact that they will continue attacking Israel, and today they're confirming that with multiple figures from us. I said the attacks against Israel will continue as they continue their oppression against the oppressed innocent victims in Gaza. Again, reiterating the talk started long ago between the United States and Yemen through Oman, mediated by Oman. The agreement that has been reached by Ansarullah and the United States supports the Palestinians and reduces tensions. Why? Because they're continuing the attacks against Israel. And we'll get to the attacks in a second. He said it prevents U.S. aggression in return for our response against them. As they started this aggression against us by declaring they're having a campaign in the Red Sea to support Israel. We were conducting a legitimate embargo on the state of Israel. And we still are conducting a naval embargo, an embargo through the sea, and an aerial embargo too. They started this. Now they reached an agreement to stop and have a kind of a ceasefire with us. Now, he also mentioned that this actually supports the Palestinian cause, and this isolates Israel. Many people are saying that, by the way. In Israel, there's still an element of shock. Many mainstream media outlets are trying to deny it, but yesterday the comments were very, very clear, and many of the population were commenting, clearly ditching Israel because we still have attacks coming by Yemen. The Al-Houthi, Muhammad Al-Houthi, not the leader but one of the leading figures, he said that they will consider the declaration of Donald Trump. Trump's declaration is a victory. And again, he also said that it isolates Israel. This is a total failure for Benjamin Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu should resign. Should resign. He's saying that Benjamin Netanyahu, it's over for him. He should resign. Now, this is coming after Yemen conducted more attacks against Israel. Today, there were multiple attacks coming from Yemeni Ansarullah against multiple locations in Israel. How? They targeted the Ramon airport. Yemen targeted the Ramon airport. They targeted a location in occupied Jaffa and two other key or strategic locations inside of Israel. There was a statement coming from the spokesperson of the Yemeni Ansarullah, the military, saying that they're continuing their attacks. He also spoke about the downing of the F-18. However, that was before the understanding between them and the United States. This was clearly the one that they spoke about previously. But what wasn't clear from the statement, or what I failed to see personally, is if there was another F-18 taken down. So far, the United States confirmed that that only one was taken down. However, this could be referring to the previous attack where the United States confirmed that one of their F-18s was taken down, because otherwise this would be a tremendous loss for the United States. I did not see a confirmation from the United States saying that there was another F-18 taken down, and they did clarify in that statement that this report was referring to the period before the understanding has been reached between the United States and Yemen. Now, how is that all going on with the talks between the United States and Iran? In Israel, they're saying that we're worried about the talks of the United States and Iran. Clearly, America is taking certain positions not totally aligned with Benjamin Netanyahu. In Israel, they're admitting that there's a crisis between the administration of Donald Trump and the Netanyahu regime. But guess what? The Americans are saying, oh, it's actually going great. The situation between Iran and the US is going great. J.D. Vance had a statement today saying that the nuclear talks with Iran on the right pathway. Vance said President Donald Trump loathed nuclear proliferation and would be open to sitting down with Russia and China in the coming years to discuss reducing the number of nuclear weapons in the world, the Economic Times reported. Europe must be self-reliant in defense, he said, adding that the United States will hold talks with the German Chancellor in the coming days. But the main thing is Iran. He's saying that the talks with Iran are going well. Trump is saying that Europe needs to defend itself. Is the America First camp winning? Or America First axis in the Trump government? Tensions with Netanyahu, saying things are going well with Iran, having a deal with Yemen that excludes Israel. Yemen attacks Israel, continues the embargo in the Red Sea, and attacks Israel today after the declaration too. All of that is important. All of these are developments that are happening. Can Donald Trump flip? Yep, he can flip, of course. But what we're seeing is, well, certain moves that are not necessarily in the favor of Israel. That's what we're seeing. Now, one of the final things, if not the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about, India and Pakistan. Very tense night, and after India's attack on certain Pakistani bases that it claimed were against terror bases, India released a statement saying we were not targeting the Pakistani army, therefore we are being reasonable with our attack, in a way to show that we're not interested in escalation. Pakistan saying we will respond in the right time, in the right place, only for them to start a massive attack, taking down 5 fighter jets that belong to India, Indian media confirming that they were taken down too, targeting an infantry brigade. destroying a whole base, and according to certain reports coming from Pakistan, imprisoning Indian soldiers too. The death toll rose since yesterday. However, what we want to understand here is, where are things going? Where are things going? India and Pakistan, both of them are nuclear powers. Are they going towards escalation? Before we get into the prospect of escalation or non-escalation, I just wanted to share with you something. What is it? Who sympathized with Narendra Modi? This is something very interesting. Who outright said, "Oh, we support India's right to self-defense"? Israel. Israel backs India's right to self-defense. Of course they back it. I mean, Israel gave us examples, the Zionist regime in self-defense, right? Now, when Israel says self-defense, one can wonder, what is Modi really thinking too? Is he also going to conduct something like the Israeli self-defense? We've had certain statements coming from extreme figures in the circles of Modi, saying that they need to approach this situation in Kashmir like Israel is approaching the situation with Gaza. Are they going to do that? Okay, that's firstly, because both Netanyahu and Modi have been best buddies for a very long time. Look at how cute they are walking on the beach together. Do you know what's the biggest thing they share in common? Pure hatred for Islam and Muslims. That's something they share in common, both of these people. Islamophobic to the high heavens. Common enemy. That's why Israel supports India so much, or Modi. Because to be fair, I mean, the people both in India and Pakistan, they deserve freedom, they deserve their rights regardless, But talking about the Modi government here, especially with his ties with Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's why Israel is saying we support their self-defense. Other countries, by the way, many of them stated that we need to de-escalate. China, many countries, Gulf, all saying we need to de-escalate. Qatar, Oman, willing to mediate, all of that talk. But Turkey said we're supporting Pakistan. Turkey was one of those countries who outright said, oh no, we actually support Pakistan. Turkey first to show solidarity with Pakistan after Indian strikes. Pakistan Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar thanks Turkey for extending unconditional support after India's active war. Not many countries had this position with Pakistan. However, this position coming from Turkey is understandable because of their ties with Pakistan. The Turkish ties with Pakistan have been increasing in recent years. Their coordination, their collaboration, their increased ties, economic ties, military ties too. And they were one of those countries, well, the first one, according to the foreign minister of Pakistan, to say, oh no, we outright support Pakistan. And the country that outright supported Modi was, of course, the Israeli entity, the Israeli regime. Now, is there going to be something really big? Are we going to see a nuclear war between India and Pakistan? Are things going to escalate? Where things are going to go to? This is the question that many people are asking nowadays. And I think for people to understand where things might be going, I think some people need to understand the relationship between India and Pakistan, the capabilities of the two countries, and their history too. Before saying, because some people are saying Armageddon, like Armageddon is going to happen. And listen, the conflict between two countries can reach a really high level of tensions. However, there are backgrounds that are important to understand, to know the prospect of reaching that nuclear Armageddon that some people are talking about. Now, from an Indian perspective, India has a no first use policy in relation to nuclear arms. So India says we will never be the side that begins with a nuclear attack. Pakistan's policy is to use nukes to counter a nuclear threat from a bigger and stronger country. Now, Pakistan also didn't rule out using nuclear first in general. So the policy of Pakistan is a little bit different than the policy of India in relation to the use of nuclear. But both of them have nuclear. However, they don't know how much the other side has. However, both of them are in agreement of certain treaties. They have had 34 years consecutively of treaties. One of them was the prohibition of attack against nuclear installations and facilities. The two sides have this agreement, and they exchange their nuclear facilities and installations info each January, every year, India and Pakistan. And they have been doing that for 34 years. That's a very long time, and they still do. And of course, there are tensions between them. There are escalations, now full-blown. But as in full-blown, at least up until yesterday, we haven't seen any more escalation. Following the escalation that happened yesterday, this could signal that things might de-escalate, but there's a potential that things might escalate again. However, if we talk about nuclear, because this is the big question that people are asking, are we going towards a nuclear war? We're still far from that. Why? Because there are many steps to be taken before any side reaches a nuclear agreement. No country is under existential threat. Yes, India called what the Pakistan called what India has done an act of war. They have responded. Innocent people have been killed. There was damage. However, it's still hasn't reached the stage of like full-blown outright everything. No, we haven't reached that stage. And the prospect of a nuclear attack, although it is indeed a real prospect because the two countries are nuclear powers, it's still quite a far-fetched scenario at this moment, especially considering how long the two countries have been cooperating with each other in relation to the information they give and provide each other about their nuclear facilities and nuclear capabilities, as in capabilities in terms of where they actually develop the weapons, not the amount of weapons and amount of nuclear warheads that they have.